Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bristol Town Council meeting of December 19th. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So first off, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Also, congratulations to Mary Perella and Tony Texera and Aaron Lay and Tim Sweeney and, what's your name? No, come on, don't do that. Really? So, Mr. Administrator, Steve Contenti, and our town clerk, Lou Cirillo, on getting reelected. This is our first televised meeting since that point, and I wanted to publicly thank and congratulate all of you. It's a pleasure working with some that I have, and some again, and some new. I'm very confident that the next 2 years are going to be extremely fruitful.
Well, congratulations to you, Chairman, as well. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Town Council, the first item on this evening's agenda. There we go. The first item on this evening's agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I would like to pull DD1, please.
DD1. We'll put that at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the submission of minutes of previous meetings, items A1 and A2.
Motion to approve?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the second reading. This is item C1. This is the second reading for adoption of ordinance 2018-16. This is to correct a parking problem on Buttonwood Street. This was explained at the previous meeting. It is just basically to eliminate a no parking area from a past era.
Make a motion to approve.
There's a motion and a second. Just discussion and clarity. Lou, this is currently used for parking. Our ordinance didn't align with reality. Is that a nice way to put it?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item C2, and this is the first reading of ordinance 2018-17. And the council will recall that there was a petition from a resident of Noyes Avenue that was asking for a very small amendment to a no parking area. This is the first reading to accommodate that resident's request.
Motion to approve the first reading?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And finally, we have ordinance 2018-18. This is a first reading and call for a public hearing. This is well, perhaps something that maybe the Economic Development Coordinator could provide just a little bit of insight as to what this is involved. He does have a memo to the council regarding this matter.
Before we do that, Mr. Solicitor, I know you wanted to
what I was going
suggest
to,
an amendment.
Yes, I'm going to suggest an amendment. As Chris, I'm sure, will tell you all, and you all know, this is all about breweries and where breweries would be permitted. Unlike other liquor-type licenses, brewery licenses come from the state of Rhode Island directly. Department of Business Regulation. They do not come from any of the local licensing boards in any of the municipalities. So the control that the municipality has over these breweries is through zoning. So what we're doing is we're suggesting in this ordinance amendment for first reading that in a general business zone, breweries would be allowed as a special use permit. That way all the neighbors would get notice before one went in. What is, upon review, we're noticing in the manufacturing zone, the breweries would be permitted as of right. We're recommending that you treat the manufacturing zone the same way as you treat the proposed general business zone and change that to an S, special use permit. So what I'm going to ask is, before you make a motion tonight, that you make a motion as an amended ordinance for first reading, so that when we have the public hearing, it will be there as a special use permit.
Mike, would you take a moment and explain why special use permit as opposed to something else?
Sure, because with a special use permit, that requires whoever it is that wants to develop a brewery to notify all of the residents within 200 feet of the property line. So therefore, individuals will have notice of what is going on. They'll have the right to attend a meeting and express their opinion one way or another to the zoning board. The zoning board ultimately would make the decision as to whether or not to grant the special use permit, in effect allowing them to go forward with the brewery.
Thank you. Chris?
So this all really came about when the town of Bristol was contacted by a young entrepreneur who was looking at different areas to open up a brewery. This is a business that has been rapidly growing here in the state and around the country as an experience when you go there. When we took a look at our permanent use table, we found that there wasn't really a category that it was clear. It was clear on, so where it could be, it could be held here within the town of Bristol. Our zoning official, Ed Tanner, made the determination that it fell under this packaging and canning of goods, and as the solicitor said, right now it's by right in the manufacturing zone. In the different manufacturing zones in town, the entrepreneurs felt that it wasn't the right location for his business. So we really had a conversation within our department as to where in town a business like this would be appropriate. And so that's sort of how this request came about for the special use permit.
So, Mike, could you help, and obviously, I don't know if my colleagues have any questions, but could you help us with that motion for that change?
So the motion would be to approve the ordinance amendment as amended by changing the permitted in manufacturing zone to special use permit. So in essence, in the graph or chart that you have...
Can you turn on your mic?
I'm sorry. In essence, on the chart that you have, where it says Y for yes, permitted, it would be changed to an S, which means special use permit, which means you go through that zoning process that I just recommended. So the motion would be to approve with an amendment to change the manufacturing zone from permitted to special use permit.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So,
No, go ahead.
I have a question
Go ahead.
for the solicitor. What would stop us from just articulating in this zoning ordinance that breweries are an acceptable type of thing to do in some of these areas? I mean, could we just specifically say under industrial that, having a brewery or a microbrewery or something like that?
That's being worked on. So that's going to require a major change to the zoning ordinance, which we can do, and which I believe, Diane, we're working on. Because this particular merchant would like to get going right away, we thought we'd be business friendly and accommodate this merchant by doing this tonight and at the next meeting. That's really what it comes down to.
It just seems like it would send a pretty powerful signal if there was something clearly articulated in the zoning law. And so if it's a matter of moving quickly, that's a good thing. But it's also a good thing that we're kind of starting to think ahead, I think, and saying, okay, how do we attract some of these small businesses over here to Bristol? Because people are driving all over the state to these places.
Yes.
And if you look in the East Bay, there's nothing there. And so it would be really nice if, this would be a stopping point for people to drop off some of their money and then frequent some of our businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, we will allow merchants to do this under this proposed zoning. But yes, the bigger amendment's coming.
Well, I'm really excited for the brewery coming down, and I'm glad we're moving forward with it, and we're not putting a lot of blockers in place. I think it's a It's a smart move on the council's point.
All right, so we have a...
Yeah, could we just add to the motion and to call for a public hearing at the January 16th meeting?
Yes.
January 16th meeting. If you just add
Can you
it.
amend your motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second with the clarity from the solicitor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So now we need a motion to constitute first reading with these amendments, right?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Belt and suspenders, Mike, belt and suspenders.
The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is item D1. This is the petition of Lauren Martell, doing business as Naturally Divine, now at 325 Hope Street. Request council consideration for a vittling license. You have recommendations provided by the Town Administrator, Fire Chief, Police Chief, and also a late item recommendation from the pre-treatment coordinator.
Based on the recommendations, I move to approve it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is Lauren here? No? This was an opportunity for a 30-second commercial. That's why I brought it up. So, okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Item D2, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is from Ampex Brands Pizza of New England, Incorporated, doing business as Pizza Hut at 381 Metacom Avenue. Request council consideration for a vittling license. You have recommendations from the Town Administrator, Fire Chief, Chief of Police, and a late item recommendation from the Chemist Pretreatment Coordinator.
Based on the recommendations, I move to approve it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Is there representation from Ampex Brands? Again, a 30-second commercial opportunity. Okay.
I'm missing out big
I know.
time.
All right.
I know.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
A similar request in item D3 from Vino's at the Elks, 1 Constitution Street, requesting a vittling license. You have recommendations from the Town Administrator, Fire Chief, Chief of Police, and the Chemist Pretreatment Coordinator.
Based on all the positive recommendations, I make a motion to approve the vittling license.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is William here? I feel like we're batting 1,000 here so far. No? Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
In the next item in this particular section is the petition of Karen McCarthy, doing business as Courteous Canine LLC, 1 Vasta Lane, who is requesting a dog kennel license. This item was continued from your November 28th meeting.
So,
Were there any...
Go ahead, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, were there any recommendations? I don't... Maybe they came in?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a verbal from the police chief and also from Community Development Director Williamson, but there
Please.
were on-site inspections, and we do have some documentations. We just missed the deadline.
Okay. Could you share that
Want to
with
give you a
us?
recommendation?
Thank you.
I apologize. That's my fault for not getting it to you. It was a mixture. It was mixed up, should I say, mixed in between some of the paperwork. But the zoning officer, Ed Tanner, also attached a memo outlining his findings, and Lieutenant Wozni also did with some photos, and I'll ensure that the clerk gets them to you. At this time, I don't see a problem with having them operate. They're allowed to have 3 dogs, domestic dogs, in the household, and I believe they're asking for 2 additional dogs there. So at this time, we don't see any problem. We'll monitor it, and if there is something that comes up, we'll inform you, and we'll take whatever action need be.
Okay, recommendation is to approve, right? Yep, sounds good.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. For discussion purposes, we have a few of these around town, and I'm not aware of any issues at all. So this is I know the homework has been done, and then the business owners have been doing a great job with this, so I'm happy to approve it also. Is there any other?
I'll pause up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Is there a desire to limit it to 5? Is that the...
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm speaking for myself. Tim, you made the motion? Is that
Yeah.
correct? What's your thoughts on that?
It was supposed to, and the recommendation was to limit to 5, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that was,
Make that part of your motion.
yep, and what we're going to approve with a limit of 5 dogs.
Second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second with a limit of 5. Is there any other discussion? I'm sorry, I'm looking. Is she here? Are you here? No? 30-second commercials, all going to the wayside here. It's okay. I guess so.
Wow.
But we're happy to share it,
Christmas
that's why.
shopping.
All right,
Yeah.
so we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is item E1. This is the junk and secondhand licenses for 2019. You have the recommendations provided by the Town Administrator, the Chief of Police, and the Fire Chief.
Based on all the positive recommendations, I make a motion to approve.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item F1. This is the petition of Judy Anderson, 117 Constitution Street, request council consideration for an accessible parking space nearby her residence. This is the second reading for adoption. You have recommendations from the Town Administrator, Chief of Police, and Public Works Director.
I move that we approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The item F2, similar request from Allison Bartone for Wilson Street. You have the recommendations provided by the Town Administrator and Public Works Director and Chief of Police.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a question.
Please.
For Director Kevin McBride, I just had a question on your recommendation. You put in your recommendation that there is a problem there with the parking. It looks like there was, if I reviewed it correctly, it looked like on-street parking, or it would cause on-street parking. But correct me if I'm wrong.
On that street, it's a very narrow road, and right now to conduct on-street parking, the limited spaces that are available, most people have to utilize what you'd consider sidewalk area. Because there's so limited space, my recommendation in this case was, because this particular petitioner has off-street parking today, if we go forward, then we'll eliminate an on-street space in a very limited area. And that was the only reason for my recommendation as it stands. I believe you should have a photo in my recommendation to give you an idea. But the width of that road is very narrow. It's one way, and again, there's limited space for those that live on the street.
Thank you.
Could you speak to us about, do you know if the applicant does, I mean, you're expressing that the applicant has off-street parking. Do you know what the need is if there is off-street parking?
I didn't do a needs study on the street, if that's really,
Sure.
I did not do that. I just looked at the petition as submitted, the parcel that it would affect, which would be right in front of that, the resident of 4 Wilson, and then the amount of spaces on the street. If you have on-street parking, if you have off-street parking to allow you that opportunity for accessible space, and then you take one and put it in front of the house, now we've eliminated an on-street space, and that was my only concern because of the area. And I think we've had this discussion in the past that, parking is a commodity in many of the areas within town, and unfortunately, this is one of those areas where it's very limited, and again, the street's very narrow, so it doesn't afford a lot of other areas to park.
Chief, your recommend... Go ahead, Mary, please.
I was just going to say that the thing that concerns me just a little bit about this is in the sergeant's report, it says that petitioner explained...
She can't hear.
Oh, it is on, I think.
It is?
Can you hear? Yeah, I think
Maybe slide it forward.
that the petitioner, explained that she can park in the driveway when she needs to, but she would like the ability to park in the street if she has guests over at her house. So does that mean that the guests would go in the driveway and then she'd have a reserved spot, which I think is a little difficult given that parking situation. If that's the main reason, is on those occasions.
Well, I also considered that, and that's what kind of led me to believe that the best case here was to deny the petition, because you have that ability to park off-street, and then what you'd essentially have is 2 dedicated parking spaces for that residence, when some of the other residences don't have the opportunity to get off-street. And that was my concern, trying to be fair and equitable to those that live in the neighborhood. Not to diminish the need of the accessible space, but again, fair and equitable to those residents. And if you have a space off the street, I think that is important to take under consideration. And that was the reason I provided the photo to the council.
Chief, could you speak to this? I know that your department is also recommending denial.
Right. And I believe there's also a photo from us that shows you the size of the driveway. And according to the sergeant, absolutely, as you know, there are multi-family homes on that road. I think the majority of them are all 2 to 3 family homes. Parking there is premium. And as Councilwoman Perella said, the need here is only if she's going to have a guest or someone at the house where she'd have what appears to be a reserved parking spot in front of her house. We'd all like to have that, but at this point, I don't see how we would warrant giving her a parking spot in front of her door. If it was because there was a wheelchair, ramp that would lead to that area or whatever, then I think we'd take that into consideration and it would warrant the handicap spot. But at this point, with a driveway that you can very easily park 2 vehicles in there, my recommendation is that we deny it. This was well looked into by 2 officers and the highway director and his assistant. So,
Thank you, Chief.
And quite often, what some of our petitioners forget is that just because they have a handicap sticker, if anybody else that comes about that has a sticker, they can park there as well. So really, it's off limits. It's not off limits, I should say, to anyone who has that particular the placard.
So what's this council's pleasure?
Make a motion to deny the second reading for adoption based on the recommendations.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor to deny?
Aye.
Any opposed to denial? Thank you. Doesn't feel clear, does it?
The next item is a petition of Irene Cavalieri, 43 Congregational Street, request council consideration for an accessible parking space. This is the second reading for adoption.
So move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item F4. This is the petition of Linshaw and others, request council consideration to extend Christmas lights through the end of January 2019.
Is Lynn here? I didn't see Lynn. No? Is there someone here to speak to it? It's okay if it's not. Director McBride, I'm wondering if, and actually I should probably ask through the administrator, is there a recommendation to us for this? I know that you and I spoke earlier today in regards to dollars in regards to electricity. I know there's other fees and all of that, but what was your thoughts on this?
Our thoughts are if they benefit and we can quantify somehow that it's benefiting our merchants, then it's probably a good idea. The lights are up for almost 5 weeks, and actually we put them up usually the Thursday before Thanksgiving. Do the pre-illumination show. They go viewing, then they're turned back off. So they're up there for quite a while. If we have severe weather, I know the police chief can attest with data that we do have to respond for wires in the street. DPW responds throughout the season to repair the lights. The snowflake is very valuable and it's aging, so we'd rather not have it out there, especially in the more severe weather that is coming in January. But if it's that important, we're not going to vehemently object to it. But part of me says that sometimes too much of a good thing isn't good either, so it might lose its luster if they're on too long. So we're not objecting to them staying on. I would say if it's going to be costly for us to maintain them through January, I think a decision would have to be made to turn them off.
I agree. Tony?
I concur with the administrator. In fact, if it comes to be a problem with the weather and lights are damaged and we're not consistent, don't have consistent lighting throughout, better off knock off the switch, because the repairs is just tremendous, the cost of repairing the lights.
I think it's also one part of the experience in Bristol. I think you have to look at, if we're going to extend the lights, we also need to have the businesses open later. We also need, the restaurants are running, but we also need to know what that full experience is going to be where it gets back to your point, where what are those dollars going to convert to dollars, making sure it's a benefit, right? I mean, so it's a full.
Please.
I was just going to say that. I mean, it seems to me that, I mean, I can definitely try it for try it out through the end of January, but I mean, I think we should monitor it kind of on a weekly basis. You never know what the weather's going to be, but to me, my gut reaction was maybe the middle of January. Like one thing, and I think it may have been when we had the recession. I mean, the lights were off around New Year's, when technically the 12 days of Christmas it ends at around January 6th, whatever that Sunday is. So I do think, and I know last year I noticed that they did stay on through that period. So I definitely think it should stay on through that period, maybe up into Martin Luther King weekend, something like that. I'm happy to try it out to see, but we don't want to, and I think maybe the snowflake maybe would be taking that down, maybe, and just leave the lights if it's such a valuable and such a, getting older. We can see how it is, but it's whether or not. Eventually, you don't want people to just get sick of it. It becomes looking oh, this is here, So, I don't know. It's worth trying it out, see what people's reaction is, but I don't know if it's going to make that much difference.
Yeah.
If I could just add one or two things, I think the first thing is the snowflake, as the town administrator mentioned. That's an expensive item. It is aging. So my recommendation to the council would be that as soon as we get beyond our normal date, which is usually as you said, Councilwoman Perella, around the 6th, that's normally when we try to take that down, because if you remember last year, that first week of January, we got hammered with about 18 inches of snow. The lights in the downtown area got hit pretty hard. And also keep in mind that we put these lights up, they start going up in October, because I have to meet, we're looking for the Merchants Night, which is, this year was the 16th of November. So you're looking at from the tail end of October, and now you're going to take it through. So that's 3 months that they'll be up. That's a long time for those lights to be up. I had a crew out there 2 days this week repairing the lights on the south side of Hope Street because of the damage that we sustained from the storm recently. We have another major storm coming in this week. We'll be doing the same thing. We try to sustain the lights from end to end throughout the period that we're working with now. If we extend it, I would say the weather's going to become more problematic. But I would definitely recommend we pull that the snowflake down. And then if you're looking to do a trial period, and certainly we'll work with the council, but I would also, if we're going to do this in the future, maybe we look at that total window collectively, that we have the lights up, because they're up for a great amount of time.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend perhaps a report for next year. We'll leave them on this year, and for next year we'll get a report from our Economic Development Coordinator with a recommendation.
I think that's an excellent idea. For myself, I think the snowflake should come down. I do agree with Tim's comment earlier. It would be great if the businesses coincided with the time that the lights are out. Obviously, they're on until 11. We're not talking about that, but it would be great to take advantage. If we're going to have them on for business, it would be great to have the businesses open later or coincide with that later time. And I do also agree with what was said, Tony and others, that if they do go out, if there's major damage, then we will have to turn them off, because obviously it'll look horrible to have a few of them on and a few of them off. So we'll make our best effort to move forward with this, and if it turns out they stay on, I'd love to see benefit. Last thing I'll say is that I also agree with what the administrator said. I mean, maybe too much of a good thing. You actually gave me a great analogy this morning. If the ball in New York, Times Square, came down 2 days before and then again, it would lose some of its luster. I do believe that the walkabout is beneficial with the lights. I think it's a great analogy. So I think we should keep that in mind. It's not just the dollars, and we are talking about that, but it's also the magic. I think it loses some of it when it's up a little bit too long. But let's try it. Let's see what happens. And I don't know what my colleagues, but let's take down the snowflake as we normally would and go through what was requested, the last of January, am I correct?
January 6th, I heard?
All right.
No, for the snowflake or for the...
No.
It's through the end of January.
Through the end of January. So let's go with the request, if my colleagues are amenable to that.
Can I just...
Please.
Can I just...
Oh, yeah.
Is this one? I just want to ask one more question, if that's okay. If there are any, storms or anything like that coming around in January, February, that kind of time, would preparing for the storm, would taking doing something about these lights or anything like that take away from any efforts that we would have to prepare for any storms?
they would become a lower priority, and we focus
just
on
flip it
storm
off.
response.
Yeah.
However, as the police chief mentioned a little while ago, wires come down all the time,
Yeah.
so that becomes an immediate response that we would deal with. So it's situation dependent, but the storm gets the priority, and if the lights go out, they go out. We get to them when we get to them.
While the snow first, I mean, certainly.
So let me see if I can put this in, so we take the snowflake down as we normally would, January 6th is what you mentioned, or in that time zone. Leave the
vicinity,
lights up
correct.
through the end of January, with the caveat that if there's some major damage that is no longer appropriate to keep them up, that we won't have them on. So, can we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Is there any other discussion?
My only other discussion is a request that we take up the extension of the, the number of blocks that's covered for the lights. I know we talked about it, and I heard that it was going to go further beyond Bradford this year, and it didn't, right? So if it's going to get down towards Franklin or towards Washington, where I think at once upon a time it was there.
Franklin. It was
Yeah, yeah.
stop line, yes,
So
Franklin.
I'm just like, we can take that up at the budget time. I
Yeah.
just want to put that out there. That's
Okay. We do have some good news. The first time in many years, we illuminated the best we could Wood Street this year.
oh yes.
That looks very nice. It looks very nice.
The wreaths are small, but they're meaningful.
Yeah.
So,
Small and meaningful.
Also, I also just want not to get in too much on the Christmas festival. I'm not on it, but you are, right, still?
No, my wife is.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So,
good.
I mean,
Not me.
I think like we should have another little mini
classy.
lighting for Wood Street and the Common, because the Common, the gazebo really looks nice, and those wreaths that they do
Yes.
look really nice too.
Yeah.
I agree.
Memorial wreaths, and I think that there's room
Were
for
they
that.
dedicated?
Oh, I know, Miss Spirit of Christmas is here. I know. She's not. You're on the committee, or are you not? She's the honoree, like the Grand Marshal.
Yes.
So those are just things that we all have thoughts of. So.
And that motion also included that report that the administrator suggested from Economic Development. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Bless you.
Bless you.
Let's see.
Okay. The next item is the first item in your appointment section. This is item G1A. This is the Conservation Commission. There are two positions with terms to expire in December of 2021. You have Allison Ring, who is not seeking reappointment, and Jay Maciel, who is interested in being reappointed.
Motion to accept Allison Ring's resignation with a letter of thanks.
Second?
And we can set up an interview for Jay. Or
This a reappointment.
Oh, reappointment. And a motion to reappoint Jay.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is a Personnel Board. This is a 1 four-year term to expire in December of 2022. You have Elizabeth Renee currently serving, who is interested in being reappointed.
Motion to reappoint.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next is the Juvenile Hearing Board. There are two positions, 3-year terms to expire in December of 2021. You have Wayne D. Marshall, who is seeking reappointment, and Linda Lou Dubois of 21 Riverview Avenue, also seeking reappointment.
Motion to reappoint.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
You have the next item, which is sub-item D. This is the CRMC alternate council member for Bristol. You have John B. Triano, 707 Hope Street, currently serving, seeks council consideration for reappointment.
Make a motion to approve, to appoint John B. Triano,
Second.
or reappoint, I should say.
Yep.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the final one is sub-item E. This is the Board of Tax Assessment Review. This is one position for a 3-year term to expire in December of 2021. This is by nature, a political appointment, so you have the recommendation of the Democrat Town Committee Chairman, who is recommending the reappointment of Robert Farris, currently serving.
Make a motion to appoint Anthony Rigo. I'm sorry, Robert Farris, yes.
Yep. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. This is the part where I always say, thank you to the people who are on our boards and commissions. The time that they take to make Bristol a better place and take time away from their family and friends to do that, this council and the town appreciates it. Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is the list of Town Council liaisons.
So we took a hiatus from the liaison positions of the council 2 years ago, and we continue this from our reorganizational meeting. And I'm just going to hand these out, if I may.
Certainly.
These are the liaison positions. I didn't give you too many. And I took into account the requests from anyone who shared a request or had a preference, and I took your request in the order that you gave me. And I would ask the clerk, as he normally would, is to send out to these departments and the boards and commissions and organizations, including things like the Christmas Festival and boards, commissions, elderly housing, so they know who their council liaison is. For clarity, council liaison is supposed to be and is a communication conduit. It's not to make decisions. It's to make accessible a counselor. But if you are friends with Mary, for example, and you know Mary very well, but I happen to be the liaison to a particular department or organization, talk to Mary. If you know a particular counselor and you're comfortable, please do not hesitate to talk to whomever it is that you know. But it's a great way to make sure that conversation happens, and if you're not sure who to talk to on the council, then that's your point person. And the idea is that we know what's going on with particular organizations, if assistance is necessary, and also to help us do our jobs better and understand the concerns, questions, and actually the great things that are going on. So just need do I need a motion here, Lou, on this?
It's solely your appointment, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I guess it's done then. Beautiful.
Thank you, Thank you, Chairman, for putting this together. Motion to...
Thanks for this.
I'll send a letter to everyone that has a liaison, as it is, and I'll point out as the chairman just explained what the role of the liaison is.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is item I-1. This is correspondence from Merritt Meyer, the president of Mosaico Business and Community Development Corporation, regarding the status of the Bristol Industrial Park. And you also have some additional correspondence that was provided by the Economic Development Coordinator and additional correspondence provided by Mr. Meyer.
So, Merritt, hello. Good evening. I'm going to ask Merritt to share his thoughts on his request, and then I'm going to ask Diane Williamson to also convey for the town. I know I spoke with the administrator, and I spoke a little bit earlier about this, to share kind of a nice synopsis of how it started, and certainly Merritt's going to do some of that, and also where we are at the moment so we can have a better understanding of it, and also the public can have a better understanding of it. Merritt, please, welcome.
Hello. My name is Merritt Meyer. I live at 64 High Street. I'm the president of Mosaico Business and Community Development Corporation. We own parts of the industrial park. The colored parts show groups 1, 2, and 3, which we own. And at this point, I'm not particularly happy to be here, but I have an obligation to be here. The needs of the industrial park and its effect on the neighborhood are such that the group 1 needs to have a sprinkler system installed as soon as possible, and until it's installed, the group will remain empty. And I think that if it's empty it will be empty from the end of this year, December 31st. All business in the group has to stop. Once a sprinkler system is installed and we meet the fire code, then it can be opened again. I would hope that this would be a short term rather than a long term, and I think that a little bit of background about Mosaico's role, how we got here, might be useful. In 2009, we were approached by the town administrator, Diane Medeiros, to undertake a feasibility study for the industrial park. At that point, it was in receivership, the second receivership. And the receiver had tried hard to find a buyer for the property and was unsuccessful. So the town came to us to do a feasibility study. The study showed that about $6 million worth of improvements were needed to bring everything up to code and to make the property fully leasable. After the feasibility study was done, then we were asked to implement it. So we did a lot of due diligence in the remainder of 2009 and 2010. Part of the due diligence meant going to HUD, the area office in Boston, to see what the prospects would be for obtaining money on the scale of $6 million. The area office was happy to give us $6 million. The director came down in the spring of 2010, saw the site. We met in the State House, the Bristol State House, and he liked the project and was willing to go ahead. But after we acquired title, a couple of things happened. One, the state fire marshal issued a series of violations with 2,200 photographs of minor violations. And we were instructed to go before the Fire Safety Board of the Rhode Island Fire Safety Board of Appeal and Review to try and get a variance so we could continue operations. They gave us the variance and have continued to give us successive variances as we made progress. And that was one strand that we were dealing with. We were also dealing with DEM. DEM early started doing testing. The site, they did over 70 test borings at the site. It's a brownfield, and they very much wanted us to cap the brownfield for the sake of tenants at the site, but also for the sake of the neighbors. And so we have been doing that over the last 3 or 4 years. This is an old photograph showing the site as we more or less inherited it. You can see that there was it's scattered dumping here and there. You can see that it's overgrown. It was really not safe. There had been decades of neglect of the site and also the buildings. We're in the middle of the last phase of capping the site, and I think that one of the things I gave you earlier was a listing of capital improvements, where the money came from, how it was spent, what was accomplished. And at this point, Group 2 is largely code compliant. In fact, the inspector from the fire marshal's office was there this morning. We're in the process of trying to accommodate some of the tenants from Group 1 so they have space to relocate. And the fire marshal we submitted plans last week, and the fire marshal approved us almost on the spot. He thought the plans were excellent. And so, anyway, we are moving ahead as well as we can. But as this list shows, in terms of investment for capital improvements, Mosaico has made $813,000 worth of capital improvements to date. How did we do that? We did it from staff. And how do we pay for it? Well, the rents paid for it, but we also sold some of the assets we hold. One of the assets was the smokestack. Verizon wanted to use it for their huge aerials, and so we took the money that we got from that. We paid some of the back taxes, and the rest went into improvements, mostly in Group 2. We've also received almost $1.2 million in Cdb Funds over the years. We've received almost $900,000 from state sources, mostly DEM, to do the capping. And the federal amount of $200,000 also was for the brownfield. And so basically, with a small staff and limited funds, we've made progress. But at this point, the state fire marshal is insisting that Group 1 have a sprinkler system installed. We have a price to do that. It will be in the area of $300,000, but we don't have the funds to do it. Consequently, Group 1 is being closed, and one of the other sheets that shows the income that we receive from Group 1 and from Group 2. Currently, or in the last 12 months, we've received about $70,000, a little less, but about $70,000 from Group 1. That will be, we will lose that this coming year, or some of it, depending on whether we get funds to put in the sprinkler system. That will reduce our income for the coming year to about $210,000. 210 does minimal operation. Will be able to continue or limp along, but we won't be able to make the improvements in Group 1. On the other hand, if we are able to install the sprinkler system and rent the vacant spaces, that will produce something over 116, or around 116,000. That means that the investment over 3 or 4 years will pay for itself. So I just wanted to present this, lay it out. It's your decision.
Thank you. Diane, could you? Thank you. Thank you, Merritt.
Sure. And Merritt did cover a lot of this, so I don't know if you have any specific questions. But basically, the property was in receivership in '05, the first time. The owner was able to acquire it back, and when it went into receivership again in 2010, the town really was hoping for a new developer. The prior developer who was there wasn't really, maintaining it well. There was a lot of deferred improvements to the park, and things were sort of let go. So when he acquired it back in '05, it was disappointing, and when it went into bankruptcy again, the town said, we're hoping that that's not going to happen a second time. And we did take a more active role in trying to get developers to come to the table. We had nobody come to the table. Folks had kind of kicked the tires, and they really, from what I recall, they didn't really share the town's vision in some of the redevelopments that we were getting. We wanted to keep this manufacturing, small-scale manufacturing for incubator space, and that was really the vision that the town had and the planning that was done to that point. As Merritt stated, the town reached out to Mosaico. They had already had a presence in the neighborhood. Members of Mosaico were actually part of some of the early neighborhood planning that was done with the former Kaiser Mill. And so we did look at the feasibility and the potential for them to take over as owners of this park. I think the other thing that was a consideration was their ability to get grant funds. And as was stated, the park was in disrepair. It was a very heavy lift to think about everything that needed to be done to get it to where it needed to be. And the fact that we had no other developers coming to the table were sort of, it was concerning because we couldn't have this complex continue in the way it was continuing. So the fact that Mosaico as a nonprofit could secure CDBG funds, and they had previously gotten CDBG funds for their their storefront work and their work in the neighborhood.
Diane, would you just give everybody clarity on CDBG funds?
Sure. So it's Community Development Block Grant, and it's funding that you have to have a national objective, and one of the national objective is that you in this particular case, you provide jobs to low to moderate income people. The neighborhood itself is low to moderate income, primarily low to moderate income residents, so it qualifies for the Community Development Block Grant funds by the composition of the folks who are there, who live there. So that was sort of a little history of where we were with them, Mosaico acquiring it. As was stated, they did acquire it with a lot of issues on the fire suppression, the fire code, the violations that were in place, and they've been working, as was stated, to remedy those violations, primarily with the use of the Community Development Block Grant funds. This summer, they applied for their next round of Community Development Block Grant funds, and we found out just recently that they were not going to get the funding. There was another loan that we were encouraging them to apply for, a Rhode Island Housing Community Development loan for these types of revitalization projects. That did not get funded either. Do
we know why?
That kind of brings us to tonight.
Diane, do we know why? And Merritt, maybe I should be asking you, as opposed to Diane, if you don't mind. Thank you.
The denial letter was explicit but vague at the same time. They had reviewed our audited financial statement and were particularly concerned about the amount of debt and the long-term debt. The first note holder, Bristol Wood Street Funding, Inc., holds notes for $1,550,000. We haven't paid any interest or principal on those notes, so in 8 years it's going to be in the area of $2.4 million. And the town has a note for taxes incurred by the previous owner, but they survived the receivership. And I think the note there was for $234 roughly, but with interest, it now is in the
256 zone. Yeah.
Okay.
256.
You know better than I.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. Do my colleagues have, please, Mary?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, just a couple of thoughts. Since I was there at the institutional memory, not ancient or anything, because it wasn't that long ago, but I was back on the council at that point, and I remember that session. I think it was back in Lou's office. I mean, I think executive session to figure out what we should do, and if I remember correctly, there was a really successful nonprofit model I'm sorry, it might not be working right because it is...
You just got to get closer.
Yeah, because it's a different one than I usually have. I apologize. I usually don't have it quite that close to me.
Is that better?
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, the nonprofit model, like community development models for housing, were very successful, and there was a nonprofit model for businesses such as this in Northern Rhode Island, and I think that's what we were hoping would take this project on, or we could emulate that. I think that's how we came to this and how we came to Mosaico and asking them to do it. And, I think when you look at all of the materials and you read the materials and you think about it, it seems like this has been an ongoing, never-ending project that is, sometimes you feel like it's good money after bad, and sometimes it seems like there are successes, pieces of success in this. However, when you talk about it, it's really not even been 10 years. And given the state of affairs, I'm sure I heard it and knew it somewhere along the line, but to reread this and see 2,200 violations, fire code violations, is pretty dramatic. And the brownfields issue, and lots of other issues that were there. So I do think the project overall has come a long way in the 9 years that it's been going on. So I do feel, I think I've stated this in other meetings. I think that we should try to see it through to completion, but I understand the hesitancy because of the money that has been put in. But I do have a question, and I don't know who can answer this. If we were to make this, if we were to agree to this loan, how quickly could the sprinklers get installed so that businesses don't have to all move and appear? You get the holidays coming, so that's good and it's bad. It's like a lot of people are not going to be working, so it's going to be hard to get people to come and do it. But if they had to close for maybe like a week or two, I have no idea how long this all takes. Rather than have to pack everything up and move their entire business, I think that's what I'm wondering, because I think there was some hope with the CDBG grant back in June or July, whenever it was that first went forward, that this would all be resolved by this point in time. So do you all know how long that takes to get done?
We were hoping it'd be resolved also.
Yeah. I was there too.
The subcontractor who has done sprinklers throughout the industrial park with iShalom as well gave us a bid a few weeks ago, updated his materials and estimate of cost. And it will, once he starts work, it'll be anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks. It depends on how much we help him in the process. There's a fair amount of demolition that needs to be done. We've done some of it, but we would install the pipe, but we don't have a license to do it. It's a specialty. He knew in November, early November, if he had to go ahead, he had hopes that he'd be done by the end of the year. But we didn't get the money we were hoping for, and so it's going to be, once he starts, it'll be 3 to 5 weeks.
So once that's the person's installing the sprinklers, right?
That's right.
Then what happens after that? Is there more time for the state to come and approve it, or they approve the plans and they just come and say, okay, they did what they said, and it's like a day or two, or is it another?
It's not exactly a day or two, but it's not much more than that.
Okay.
For instance, when we submitted plans about 8 or 9 days ago, 10 days ago, for renovations or improvements in group unit 213, they reviewed the plans. The plan reviewer, Deputy Marshal, came this morning, and we walked through the space. And so once we are ready, they come very quickly.
So it's like 4 to 6 weeks, basically. Like
Yeah,
3 to 5
in that range.
One last question, then I'll shut up, but only for temporarily. But, temporarily, I might think of something else. But what if we were to approve this and the project gets done, say by early February? What will happen to the current businesses? Will they still be moving? What will happen? Like, paint that picture, or will this group of buildings end up being vacant? And if they are, then do you have people on a waiting list to fill them? I mean, part of doing this is not to lose those businesses.
Of course.
But they may have to go somewhere.
It's a case-by-case basis. There are 3 or 4 parties, three parties that are in there now who are contemplating moving into space in Unit 213. One of them has finished the move. Black Duck. They were on the second floor. They are thrilled with the space that they have, that they moved into. I don't think they'll be going back to the second floor. They liked it, but they won't be coming back. One of the tenants has been in the process of retiring for the last 3 or 4 years, so he probably won't come back. 2 others are moving into 213. And if they want to stay, they can. If they want to go back after this, call it a hiatus, they can. It's up to them. The one big concern I have, or the biggest concern I have, is also the largest employer. He's the 3rd largest employer, boat builder in the state. At least that's what he said. Morgan Marine, and I hate to see him forced to shut down. If it's for a month or 2, we all survive. But if it's a longer term, then it's a real pity. So the sooner we can get this done, the better.
How were the businesses allowed to move in if there was such a fire suppression system in the first place? Is it still or was it?
The fire suppression system that was there was effectively destroyed, at least in parts, critical parts, in the big supply lines by the former owner. And so one of the things the state fire marshal required was that we install life safety equipment, pull stations, fire alarms. If there was a fire here, all the lights went out. We would head for the door, but there would be battery lights coming on, and so we installed all of that in Group 1. That's been done. The big item, though, is the sprinkler system because it serves the whole group.
Thank you.
Mr. Meyer, thanks for being here with us today. Can you just kind of walk me through what a worst-case scenario would look like if there wasn't a loan that was delivered to Mosaico?
I hate to contemplate it. In the event we don't get a loan and Group 1 is closed for a long time, it will become a blighted property, and that's not good. It would have a severe impact on the neighbors to the south on Shaw's Lane, but it's also one of the first buildings you see as you go into the industrial park, and you want the park to appear to be healthy. In a building that is closed and perhaps boarded up is not a good sign. It would put an enormous financial strain on Mosaico. We have already made tough decisions to reduce our overhead, and I think that the income from Group 2 would allow us to continue probably, but just barely. And if we don't continue, then there would probably be a third receivership. And I have no idea how that would work out. It would not be good for anybody. But I think one reason we chose to focus on Group 2 and make it as more or less self-sufficient was what is on the north. You've got Elder Care 1, Elder Care 2, and Franklin Court Assisted Living. You've got 200 senior citizens in the first 3 phases that we did. And you want to keep, well, you don't often find industrial uses juxtaposed to residential uses, but this is an odd case, and it works. But if, God forbid, if we went into receivership, it would not be good for anybody, in my view.
Are there any? Are you working on any current grants or any other sources besides coming to the town? What else are? What is the overall plan? I'm trying to.
Well, we did try and bring somebody from Rhode Island Economic Development in. They are providing verbal assistance to people who need to relocate, but in terms of providing loan money to make improvements, they don't have it. When we met across the street a few weeks ago with Mike Tondra, who runs CDBG for the state of Rhode Island and has for, 9 years now. More than 9 years. He said we could reapply, and it would be my intent to reapply, but I think he would like to see some progress also. I think that one of the reasons, as Diane explained, one of the reasons we were rejected in this last round of CDBG was that the loan that we had applied for simultaneously was denied, and they thought that loan would be used as part of a match on the CDBG, and when we didn't have the match produced by the loan, then I think CDBG got nervous. And if I'm misstating this, correct me, please.
And so you were denied by the Community Development Block Grant,
that's
correct?
Right.
Due to an audit, right, of outstanding debts and obligations, right?
They didn't see the audit, although they didn't ask for it either, and I would have gladly showed it.
Okay.
The audit didn't show anything irregular. It just showed a lot of existing debt. If you take the tax debt that we inherited and also the loans that we received from Wood Street Funding, that's $2.5 million worth of loans. And if the state expected us to pay back their 20-year or 30-year loan at a very low interest rate, they didn't see how we could possibly pay it back. I wish they had come to us.
Right.
There is a way that it could have been done, and that would have been for for Wood Street Funding to subordinate to the state loan, and for the town to subordinate to the state loan. That would have put the loan from the state in primary position, and the income generated by the improvements would have been sufficient to pay off that loan. But the state didn't ask us about how we figured that,
right.
And it certainly wouldn't appear in an audit, and didn't. But anyway, we were rejected.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think it's in Bristol's best interest to keep you open. I think and as a safety into the community, since you're in the center of town, we wouldn't want a fire or anything like that. There's quite a bit of a liability there. But I'm nervous about the outstanding debt and applying for more grants and more denials, and say we give you, or say if I take you, hypothetically, take you down the path, the town does loan the $300,000, that maybe that gets the fire suppression system, but are you guys making enough money where you're, able to bail yourself out? I just see it kind of a cyclical cycle where we're sort of out to sea, but then back on the rocks months later. You know what I mean?
Well,
that's what I'm concerned about.
either of the two note holders could put us in a position of default. And
I'm sorry?
They could put us in a position of default. We haven't paid any interest since 2010. So what happens is notes get renewed with a longer-term debt repayment schedule. And so one of the loans, I think, we have starts paying interest in 2029. At that point, we probably will have sufficient income to start paying down the debts.
Mm-hmm. And is there a long-term vision to work with a public-private venture at all, or to kind of bring,
The answer is,
you know what I mean? I'm just thinking outside the box here, where, you bring in a private funder to maybe take over one of the buildings, and you guys are sort of, it's a
condominium, and if we sold one of the buildings, and I would love to sell I'd love to sell all three buildings.
Yeah.
But whoever buys it is still saddled with the code problems. They have to correct anybody who acquires this. It's a complicated acquisition because of the physical shape of the buildings. They need lots of repairs, but they also need to become code compliant. So if you're going to take on those burdens at the same time you're taking on debt, it doesn't work. And so I was asked earlier about one of the possibilities. A possibility which we're trying to avoid is receivership. If it went into a receivership another time, the note holders would suffer greatly. They'd probably get wiped out. And I don't want anybody to get hurt in the process.
Okay. Merritt, while you're there, question. You used the word improvements for Group 1.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not talking about sprinkle system only, are we? Because even if you install the sprinkle system, are the roofs in good shape that would sustain those, the sprinkler system without being damaged?
We have, in Group 1, we've got about 29,000 square feet of space. We have around 1,000 square feet of roof area that needs repair. That's all in, almost all of it is in Building 111. It's in the northwest corner, in the middle of the building, and in the southeast corner. It's less than 1,000 square feet.
So there are issues with the roofs.
Yeah.
So the sprinkler system obviously cannot be installed if you don't correct the roof issues, though.
That's why 300,000. The sprinkler system itself, the bid we have is, I think, 155 plus an additional 25 to hook it up to the pump house in Shalom. So some of it would be to correct those parts of the roof where the decking is in tough shape, and some of it would be to provide heat. The heaters, the gas-fired heaters were removed in 111, so some money would be needed to put them back in. And right now, the fire system, the sprinkler system that has been designed is for a wet system, and that's why you would need the heat.
So obviously, you're looking to a lot more than just a sprinkler system in order to make these buildings functionable.
But yes, that's true. That's why it's 300 and not 180. 180.
Where,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question, Julie. Could you please let us know, what is the town on the hook for at the current time, at the present time? Do you have those numbers?
How much do we
Total.
have in loans for?
Yes,
for-
altogether, that the town is outstanding to the town.
So Mosaico has a note receivable for approximately $225,000. That was through the HUD money, through the state. That's a revolving fund. The town also has a note receivable, which mentioned on the original taxes. That was $236,000. And then there are currently taxes due in the amount of $136,000.
So it's about $600,000, approximately.
Right.
So for myself, I think that I want to be kind. We've had multiple meetings about this multiple times. We've had multiple executive session meetings where requests were and we handle executive session with things like loan extensions, loans themselves, things that are appropriate. And this was one of those things. This is here tonight because it was appropriate that it wasn't in executive session. $600,000 of outstanding money out there. This is not a critique on you, Merit, or the board, but we have asked multiple times about where this was going, about repayment of the mortgage. The mortgage was in default in 2015. Correct, Julie? Was it 2015 or 16? Let's say it's 2015-16. We'll just
The note.
the note.
Yeah, the note.
The note. I apologize. Which is the is $236,000. The reason why the conversation was even happening was the council asked to talk to you. When we asked for a business plan, the business plan did not include any accounting to pay back the loan, to pay any of the taxes, and to pay the $225,000, what was called the revolving fund. Now, side note on the revolving fund, that $225,000, if not paid back, we can't use that for someone else. That's not town dollars, but those dollars are used to help another business succeed, and that money comes back to the town, and then we can loan it out to someone else. I commend you for what you've gotten done, but for myself, I can't vote to approve $300,000 because there's never been a plan to pay back the money, and I'm talking about taxpayer dollars here. I can't, for myself, in good conscience, not because I'm not aware of all the things that are happening on this. I know there's employees over there. I know there's businesses over there. But this isn't the town. The town didn't not do something. In fact, it was the exact opposite. There's been immense efforts on the town end of things to extend the loan. It was in default. And we decided, the prior council actually, decided to extend the loan, to allow you to go out for that grant, because we thought it was absolutely wonderful, thought it was appropriate. But now that that's not happening, we have a loan that there's no paperwork anywhere well, I should say that I'm aware of, so let me be very careful with that shows any inkling of that being paid back. Any accounting at all of your yearly incomes to pay back any of those loans. The $136,000 in outstanding taxes, which is what it currently is, that's of this morning. I asked that from Julie. Thank you. Shows that that's outstanding, and that's been paid by a tenant. So it's what I mean by that is not the $136,000. A tenant has paid it, so it didn't go into tax sale. So for myself, I'm aware of the challenges here, but I can't in good conscience vote to approve giving another loan. And if I use quick math, that's about 60 homes. $5,000 apiece, 60 homes paying taxes, somebody going to work like I do every day, and when I pay my mortgage, I've got my property taxes in there. I can't in good conscience spend that money, not because I don't want to, it's because there's a track record of $600 not being paid, and I don't think there's any track record to be able to pay it.
You make valid points. I don't disagree with them at all, but if the current note holders subordinate to the 300,000, the 300,000 will get paid back. As the numbers show, the amount generated by the income from Group 1 once the fire suppression system is in more than pays back the 300. As far as the larger notes are concerned, I don't know what will happen about that. But I do know if we go into receivership for a third time, that they won't be paid back.
So I was clear in regards to not that I couldn't support additional funds, but Mike, Mr. Solicitor, could you talk to us about, if, just to walk it through so we understand it correctly, what position would this dollar figure go into? What loan position would this be?
Well, so, and I don't know if you've had conversations with Mr. Fain or his attorney, but obviously they would, if the town was even going to consider this, they would have to agree to subordinate, because if it weren't subordinated, we would be behind that 1.2 million.
So can you say that again in
That
plain speak, if you will?
Sure. If you gave Mosaico a $300,000 loan this evening, it would be behind the current recorded loans, mortgages that are already in the land evidence records, the big one being Mr. Fain's. So he would have to agree to allow our loan to jump ahead of his.
Which is $1.5 million, correct?
Whatever it is right now, yeah.
Okay.
And just to follow up on this, I did talk with his attorney, Tom Hemmendinger. Let's see, today is Wednesday. I talked to him on Friday, and he said that it's not a good choice for his client doesn't have any good choices, but having Mosaico survive is a much better choice than anything else. So he would strongly recommend to his client that Wood Street funding subordinate to the town's $300,000 if and when it was available.
Can we get that in writing? I mean,
oh, you'd have to.
I mean, we need.
We'd all want it in writing. Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
But to the chairman's point, let's follow the path that if we were to let you borrow Mosaico borrow $300,000, but not having a plan of action for payment of the taxes, so we go back to a tax sale. So now, where are we? I really couldn't follow that logic there.
Can I just ask a follow-up to that, though? Isn't it possible that, I know we've been working on this for a long time, all of us, and it's important, I basically, in general, support the loan. But, as I said earlier, it's like how much good money after bad you put into this, because we can't have this blighted area in the middle of town. We don't have a lot of choices because we have gone around and around and around in executive sessions for several years, as you know. What are some of the options? What are some of the other things we could do? We've talked among ourselves as to what are some of the options that we have. There really aren't, just like you said, Mr. Fain, there aren't a lot of options because no one's banging down the doors to want to buy this property or to want to move it forward. So I'm not sure if this is a good question. To me, it seems like there could be, if we structured something with you a little more formally, where it says you need to bring these type of people on your board with these kinds of experiences. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do the other thing, and no matter how little it is, it's kind of like when you have a bill to pay and you're really behind. They always say pay like a little bit, that you're making the effort. I mean, that you're always going to every month, even though it's all been reinvested, and that's really what you've been doing, right? Whatever money you've gotten is going back into the project. That some of that money comes back to the town to start paying off some of the taxes and the loans that you have. That's how I would see it, and I think that would be doable. But other people have to I'd like to hear what some of the other people, I assume most of these people here are the businesses that are involved, and what some of their thoughts are. I mean, I just want to make sure that if we did this, we're not going to have an empty building. You have people on the waiting list, am I correct, Merritt, for
Yes.
the site? I mean, if people are, pardon me?
I don't think so. But okay, let him answer the question.
Well, do you?
Yes.
You do?
We get people once or twice a week who are looking for space. We have the cheapest space in town, and people need space. The typical rental space is $6 or more. I don't know where you could get. I know one place where you could rent comparable space for $6, but we're renting in the $3 to $4 range. So we're below at or below the market. I think we will have no trouble leasing the spaces in Group 1, and since there's 29,000, let's call it 30 for simple numbers, if we made $4 a square foot on 30,000, that's $120,000. That certainly is enough. The 120 is enough to do debt service. Well, it depends on how long the debt is.
But my problem with that is that if you silo the $300,000, your math works.
Yes.
But your math does not take into account the loans that are currently going to be due, the loan that you have with Wood Street funding, the property taxes of $136,000. Your math doesn't include any of that. So I guess a point's been made a couple times. I'm going to make a couple more here. One of them is that the town has been directly involved with getting $1.2 million to Mosaico to do those improvements. Not kind of. I mean, and I'm going to look at you, Diane Williamson, and others that have, and then you, of course, Chris, that have done a lot to get that done. That didn't happen because Mosaico asked for it. It happened in part because of that. It happened in part because you did a lot of hard work. But it was the town that got that done, and it was that partnership and the willingness to do that. And I got to tell you, the willingness was also to work with you. I know that I went to multiple meetings at Wood Street with the fire marshal and all of that. And I'm not the only one. I know the administrator has gone. Diane, obviously, has gone. Others have gone. The fire chief has gone. So, Tony, I know others have too. So, I guess I know I'm belaboring the point here, and I will stop. But there's been massive efforts to help you be successful. I think this is very much, you have to go 100 miles and you only got $2 worth of gas. I think you need somebody, and I think that you've already now shown that there is the want for that place. There are people that are interested in renting. Let me finish, please. We've got 3 schools over here that, hats off to the administrator and others, and the council, too, who's doing a good job with that, primarily through the administrator. But that is because we own it, and we have cheaper rents because we're trying to work and help people incubate and get out of it. We don't own Mosaico. This was an effort to get to a better place. Personally, if I was on the outside looking in, I would accuse us of, aren't you subventing those rents? If we were to spend that $300,000, I guess, again, I know I'm belaboring the point. What I'd like to do here is, what other questions do we need answers to, and what would this council like to do as the next? I think we've heard a lot of information here. So, what other questions, if there is any?
The $300,000, is there a estimate of the breakdown of what is that the true cost? Is that going to be to get you up and running? Because what I'm also nervous about is what you just talked about in regards to the rent that's way below. I'm just wondering if you're renting at such a rate where it's not viable, do you know what I mean, that it, again, creates another cycle. So I guess, in short, I'm looking for more of a business concrete plan, a board that's kind of robust and it's moving forward and has a plan and an overall project plan, really, you know.
Fair
so
enough.
Sorry, I
shared
a couple questions. So
no, that's fair enough. In 2017, Wood Street Funding also asked a similar question. They wanted to bring in an independent property developer, manager, and we brought in, they recommended Peregrine Associates up in Rumford. They manage tens of millions, hundreds of millions dollars worth of property. They came in, we gave them a business plan, they reviewed it, they reviewed the books, they walked the site, and they gave us very high marks in what we've done to date, and I think that you could bring in somebody else. It's not so much a management issue as it is a dollars issue. We're grossly undercapitalized. I'm not trying to say we're not. But we were $6 million worth uncapitalized when we acquired the property, but somehow we got 3.1 million, and we've made improvements. If we stop now, what happens? Group 1. If you know of anybody who wants to acquire the property at this point, with the fire code problems, with the building code issues, bring him on. We could enter, $1 might be enough for somebody to buy the property, but they will have notes to cover, and it makes no sense for anybody in the private market, if they're going to make an investment in this, who wants to inherit $2.5 million worth of debt, and also the prospect of putting in another $3 million worth of improvements. It doesn't make any sense, so nobody will do it. So if we don't go ahead, then there are major problems for the neighborhood and for the town. There are going to be problems. I'm not denying that.
Right.
But I'd rather not have monstrous problems. I'd rather have problems we can handle.
Is it possible to get people on your board that have a little more access to capital than some? I mean, because a lot of Mosaico is a community development, community people, community board members.
I'm receptive to all of that.
Started out with Franklin Court, as opposed to people that know the business, know this big type of business, and I'm not saying anything wrong about it, because it's done a fabulous job. I mean, I think of what's happened in terms of the housing the piece and everything else that's going on in that area from way back from in the 80s. Got me interested in the planning world, that project, to being what it is today. So it's come a long way, but I think that a lot of it is maybe re-identifying like the mission and the type of people that might be on there. Like we've had some success in some of our redevelopment work and so forth. I mean, I'm just wondering. I mean, maybe the infusion of just a few people can kind of help change directions who know that world. Be better. I don't know. And I'd also be curious what Steve's our administrator's position is on this. But let's get an answer from you about the board members.
I'm happy if you want to recommend people who would meet your criteria. Fine. I think Mosaico is more than happy to bring new people on the board. But remember, we don't have assets to guarantee repayment of a loan, which means we're not going to get bank financing. We're not going to get typical investors in the private market who are going to invest in this property. It has too many other problems. And so bringing new people on the board can't hurt. And I'm happy to do that, but it won't bring in. They might have ideas for other grants that we can apply for, I don't know. We've applied for state grants, for federal grants.
Well, I do think you're right
Yeah.
in this part that when you said that, you were $6 million in the hole when you started, and the town asked you to take that on. So, we kind of, in a way, if you look back, it was all well-intentioned, but it's sort of set up for failure in a way, because taking on a small nonprofit that isn't focused necessarily on manufacturing space is taking on this huge project with
no capital, yeah.
and $6 million debt. And all this work that needs to be done, because it sat there empty for, 20 years, or whatever it was?
And it's on the National Register.
Right.
This was the largest employer in town by far for generations.
Steve, did you want to share anything?
Well, first off, I'd like to say Mosaic has done a great job. So this is actually, in my mind, it's a success story from what we recall it being 10 years ago. It is successful. There's employees in there that are producing, and it appears half healthy, the portions that are occupied. But I have to think about our entire population of Bristol that work hard also, equally as hard, and pay their taxes. This is a big gamble. And the other thing I have to be concerned about is I look across at my department heads, the people that are under them, and that specifically the fire department. We had a serious fire there last year, a year or 2 years ago, and that was in Building 3. At that time, you had 3 buildings that were fully occupied and paying rent, or at least occupied, functioning and paying rent.
Yeah.
And there were issues then. We had an issue with the neighboring East Bay Community Development building with water damages, that we had to use the CDBG money and use that to, and let me finish, please, to finish the roof repairs, because we were facing potential a legal claim in damages there for water damage. What's concerning right now, and the game changer, and less than 6 months ago, I advocated for Mosaico to extend the loan. And my biggest fear was could potentially happen is we could displace workers and businesses. So we lobbied, and the council agreed to extend the loan. And again, I say this strongly. This isn't our money; it's the people of Bristol's money that's on the hook. What's most concerning right now is the last meeting we had with the Department of Administration and Rhode Island Commerce. And it appears that the funding that's been keeping Mosaico in the industrial park going is no longer available. We have an entire town to consider, and that money could probably be used somewhere, and right now it's not coming to Bristol. That's my concern right now.
Can you say what money that is that you need?
It's the CDBG grant money. Yeah. And so, and another factor is, when the town had approached Mosaico to take on this project, that was in the middle of the 2008 recession, 2008, 2009. I do disagree with you, Merritt, and I can tell you firsthand that I know of at least one individual that's been asking to purchase the property. We've had meetings in the past, and I've asked for you potentially to put some for sale signs out, market the property, market sections of the property, market the building that is a danger to the sidewalk right now. At least start parceling it out, and for whatever reason, you're refusing to do it.
There's a problem with that.
I'm not done yet, Merritt, please. Again, the department heads are all here, and the specific questions, and I look at each one of them, they can all add. We've worked hard with Mosaico to do everything we can to make this go. They've done a great job, but there are serious concerns. I'm concerned about a fire in Building 3. If this loan is approved, there's still no plan to improve Building 3 in the back, which is a liability. It's not sprinkled. I'm looking at our building official here. He recently issued were they condemnation orders or repair orders for 2 of the buildings which are structurally unsound. You temporarily shored up one of the buildings, the one closest to the sidewalk on Wood Street, and Mr. Pimenta is here. He can comment. It's a liability. It's a liability to us as a town and also to Mosaico. So it's not easy to say this, and there are people here that are hardworking, and they go there every day. And it's not fair to them that they're in this situation. We totally understand that. But again, we're here for all the people of Bristol. They're going to be holding the note if you go into receivership, one way or another. I prefer that we don't get further into debt, and we market the building and stick to what the plan was. The original plan, the way I understand it, was get a nonprofit in, get some outside funding. Unfortunately, the funding dried up, and get the building to a place where it's, again, marketable, can be put on a fair market and usable for industrial space. There's a shortage of space there. Hopefully, we can keep the current tenants there, but I think it needs to be marketed where we can get some private investment that can partner with the CDBG grants and get the place up to where it should be. We're at the 50-yard line. We just need to finish. But with the current setup, the Department of Administration already told us they're not willing to produce any more money to put into the project. My recommendation would be not to loan another $300,000.
Actually, having been prior to our town administrator here, I mean, I concur. We reached out and we work with you folks quite often with some of the departments. They use their skills and at times equipment to get in there and actually assist, with various tasks. So, we come, and I hear, I see these folks right here in front. I know what it is to be in a shop. I was there one time, make ends meet for the families. But we are at a crossroads that something needs to be done, and I concur. We no longer can put the burden back on the taxpayers.
Yeah. So, Richard, thank you, all of you. Thank you. I know Chief DeMello, when I spoke with the administrator a bit earlier today, mentioned that you maybe had, and Richard, maybe you could share a little bit about what that danger is to the public, if you would, and we're going to close this up, but I'd like to hear from, if we may, from you, Richard, and you, Chief DeMello.
So in June 13th, actually, I did a tour of the building. I received notification from a former tenant of the building, and I looked it over, and there were some concerns. Building 211A has a roof overhang falling away on Wood Street. Nothing has been done at this time to correct that. And there's also Unit 215 was brick building collapsing onto the roadway, and they did do some temporary shoring to correct that, but that's all that's been done.
Thank you. Chief?
So,
do you have anybody? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just wanted to talk about the plan of action and what we're feeling, and Diane, maybe you can help me through it on this.
I wanted to hear from Chief DeMello, if you could just share those other concerns. Thank you.
Sure. A building of that size is always a concern operationally for any fire department. Being in New England, we've seen a lot of mill fires over the years, so that's always something that's in the back of your mind that you hope you never see in your community. I've been personally on that site for inspections on and off, I think, since 2004, which is basically when the current fire code we have in place now kind of came into play after the station fire. So there were some substantial changes there that played a role in today's fire code. But not to belabor it, to speed it up today, the Rhode Island Board of Appeal and Review has heard this case for 10 years now, and granted several extensions, several variances in time, essentially, for these repairs to be completed. In what has essentially happened, and not speaking for the state fire marshal, but essentially what has come to this point, is that they're no longer able to grant any more extensions. It's been several years of extensions for many things, not just the sprinklers that you've heard in Building 1, but for several different violations, and some small, some extensive. So this has been a 15-year project where the needs have been known for a long time, and on the state fire marshal side of things, they're no longer willing to extend any more time for completion.
Thank you. So I think we've covered a lot here. Did you want to share anything on before? Because I'd like to see us take the next step. I'd like to know what this council, what's in front of us this evening is, do we want to extend an additional loan of $300,000 for the request to repair install fire sprinkler systems? So that's really what is the question in front of us. So
Are you going to take public comment, or do you need a motion first? Or what is
I'd like to get a. Is there anyone that wanted to share? Mary brings up a good point. Typically, this is not a public hearing, which doesn't require us to hear the public, but we've always, and we will continue to always allow, if someone wanted to share. I would ask you this, is that if there's a lot of people that wanted to share, then please, if you have the same thing that you want to share, just say that I concur, because it's important that we continue, because you've heard us talk about the same thing a couple of times, and we want to keep making sure that this moves forward. So was there anyone that wanted to share anything for or against? You don't have to speak either way, but is there anything that you wanted to share? Because I'm looking for this council to take the next step. Okay. Thank you. So what's this council's pleasure?
It is with a heavy heart that I really have to do this, but I have to decline the making the loan.
So there is a motion to decline. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
There is a second discussion.
Well, I think the discussion is pretty much what we've just been talking about. You know, I think it is, there's no good solution. There really isn't. And I don't know when that end point is when you stop investing in it. I mean, everybody here has made a good argument. I'm a little disappointed that there was no other comment from the people who are most impacted by it. You know, I think it's the same, Steve, as you mentioned. I mean, you know, we had a big discussion about this back in the summer in executive session, and I think that I agree with you in the sense that I would be a lot happier if we had made the decision then to front money and have this done so that businesses wouldn't be leaving. You know, that's the downside of this whole thing, is that now we're going to have a potentially empty building, but in every time we've had a meeting, Mosaico has said that they're getting calls all the time for people that want space. So I have to believe that, you know, it's not going to be we talk a lot about the public's interest, and everybody here is right. The public's interest is the financial aspect, but it's also having a blighted building that no one wants sitting in the middle of town, a budding neighborhood that's been working to upgrade themselves, and a budding senior housing. It's a bad situation all the way around. So I would lean in the favor of going one more step, but being very clear in what our expectations are. Like, they've got to start to make these payments like on a monthly basis. They've got to add some of the board members of whatever it is that we want to do. That's what I would say. So that's my view on this issue.
Yeah. Councilwoman Perella, I definitely agree with you. I think we need to move forward with a clear project plan, with a clear goal, as with quarterly reports, but also we need to market those properties like ASAP. I think there are private investors that would get out there and they would buy these properties, and we could start, getting ahead of it. But we're buried in debt, and it's nothing against the Mosaico group. You guys have been great. I mean, look what you've done over there. So this isn't a reflection on you at all. This is personalities, nothing like that. It's purely business. It's a big project. But with that project plan, we need clear deliverables. And we're going to need to get a board together that look around, maybe work with Diane Williamson and work with our team here to get a board that is strong enough where we can start moving this forward. Because I feel like we haven't been able to really reach those goals. And now with the audit and the loss of grants, I see this cyclical cycle where we're not going to be able to get ahead. And so that's where I'm really nervous about. As part of the motion, I think we need to have some of those benchmarks in place, and I'm just asking my colleagues to, if you guys agree with me, or we can discuss them out. But
Well, the motion was to deny the plan, so it's only if that fails will we have one that would put the other thing in place.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
Well, when I think of this property, this is a property that was taken on by Mosaico, if I'm correct, during the height of the recession, or right around the recession, right? So they inherited a terrible, terrible problem. And you have to imagine the amount of hazmats, the amount of toxins and things like that that were contaminating that area. And to think about how much progress has been made in that area, and then thinking about turning your back on some of that progress after it's only been about 10 years is something that concerns me a little bit. And so, you know, I come here from the benefit of not having seen a lot of the executive sessions, which can probably be a downfall as well. But it is kind of a fresh perspective, I think, that kind of says, well, maybe we need to give this a shot. Maybe, I mean, it's such a important part of town, in my opinion. It's, I think about some of the worst case scenarios for that property. Are we going to have to start doing more police patrols in that area and things like that if we run into problems? I think that I'm not necessarily sure that I share the confidence that somebody is going to come in there and just scoop up that property. And so that's why I'm leaning toward that same position that I think Mary has.
See, I think there's an opportunity for improvement over there. I think that those opportunities do exist. And although I commend Mosaico for the efforts that they put in, and it's been, in some cases, Herculean, it hasn't been enough. And that's not a finger point. It's just the reality is that it requires more than what you have at your disposal. And I don't believe it's right for us to indebt the people of Bristol additional dollars when we're not going to get to a better place. I think it's been pointed out very clearly that this is not the magic bullet. This just takes us to use your analogy, Mr. Administrator, the 51-yard line or the 49-yard line, depending on how you look at it. That's all it is. So I think it's wonderful, but I can't get there. So you're more than welcome to make that. Please.
I just wanted to say I understand.
Can you come right up? You need to come up to the mic, please. Thank you.
Work anyway. I'm like that the whole night.
If you would state
Maybe it'll work if you put it near your mouth, right?
See that? Magic. Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Jean Lineker. My husband is a tenant in that building that we're discussing tonight.
Welcome.
And I understand exactly now, having spoken to you and getting all the facts that are in place that I didn't know as your wife, and I don't even think my husband knew because he's been there for 20 years, and he's a woodworker, an antique restorer, and I understand what the situation is, and you don't have to have a brain to understand that from what I've heard tonight. My only concern is the people that are there, if they could only have had enough time to get this project done, given some time. Like, for instance, my husband could easily not work for 2 or 3 months because he's semi-retired, but it is his business and it is his passion, and we are retired, and we do need to have an income. However, the one, like the big boat builder man, poor thing, he has like 15 boats that he has to have done by April, and he's no place to go. Whether or not he does by now, I don't know. But I'm just thinking that there's going to be somebody here or around that you know who has the ability to solve this problem with the fire inspector, for instance. How long is it going to take? They gave my husband 30 days to, I think it is 30 days, is that correct? 30 days to evacuate. And then the following statement was, by law, if he wasn't out by the 1st of January, there was going to be a criminal charge of some kind. I think they rescinded on that. However, my husband's been very ill since he's heard this because this is his job, his love, his passion, and I don't want sympathy, but I just wish that we had known that the jeopardy that we were in all this years of millions of dollars of debt never being paid had been brought to our attention. Then we'd be a little bit more sensible ourselves about what we're going to do. As it stands now, we have no idea what we're going to do. My husband and I are now going to be on Skid Row. So if you see me outside of Ciara with a little bag asking for donations, be generous.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to deny. Is there any other discussion from this council?
I just don't want to be well to the point, but just making it very clear, I hear what my colleagues are thinking here, but also the statement from the administrator regarding CDBG, and I've been there, I've heard it before, and they make it very clear. If they're not going to provide those funds, what are the source of funding? It's going to be the $300,000 from the town, and hopefully any business they may be added to. But in the meantime, is their plan, which hasn't been, to really repay the town. So based on that, I stand by my motion.
But didn't they say if they see progress, they may change their view? Isn't that what somebody said, testified? I mean, I thought someone mentioned that about the meeting with the CDBG state administrator. I mean, if you see progress and you
Steve,
see
did you want to
what's
speak to
going
that?
on-
No, I didn't hear that at the meeting.
No, not the meeting. I thought someone said it tonight. I wasn't at the meeting.
I was at the meeting with Mike Tundra when he announced to the board. Chris Vitale was there, I was there, Merritt was there, and they made no indication that at any time they're going to resume funding. There's no guarantees that that's going to happen.
Well, there's never has been. With CDBG, it's always a gamble. I mean, it's always it's a grant application. I mean, let's be honest. It's, I can understand them being sick of funding this project.
The discussion that happened at that time were some of the other faults with the facility. There's millions of dollars in repairs to do to that building. Take the sprinkler system aside, the roofs are leaking, which is going to require millions of dollars. I don't know what the long-term plan is without private investment. And what he did say was that they would be happy to match CDBG funds with a private investor. That's what he did say.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to deny. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
That's a 3-2. Thank you all for the discussion and all the input. Mr. Clerk.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of Town Council, is correspondence from my office regarding the special election of March 5th, which is essentially self-explanatory. Just to point out that right now we're looking at a series of unknowns, and what has been recommended to us by the Board of Elections is that we should try to have as much flexibility as we can with that upcoming election in order to possibly reduce the number of polling places that we have in the town. I did provide the memo. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
Yes, please, of course.
Lou, there are 2 schools on this list.
Yes.
Now, usually schools are closed. Would they precipitate having to have these schools closed, or would they be able to cordon off a section of the building, or would it be best off to move like Rockwell into Quinta-Gamlin and those 2 polling places or something like that?
Well, I think what the point of the legislation would be to allow the Board of Canvassers, with the cooperation of the Board of Elections, to make those choices.
Well, I agree with you that we should go forward on this legislation.
The board, our Board of Canvassers hasn't even met on the polling places for the primary yet, but the schools will definitely be open. There's no plan to close them. There's no rules that allow them to be closed. We have had very strong resistance in the past from the school district to use those buildings if the students are present. Rockwell is absolutely impossible.
Right.
Okay, the high school may be possible, but it's extremely complicated. So the best choice that I would recommend to our board is, if they are going to have more polling places than perhaps 1 or 2 for either one of those election events, that they would seek another place and stay out of the schools completely. But I think that what and speaking with the Board of Elections and just from my own personal experience, everything is sort of crunched together to have to do this. So we don't really know what the fabric of that election is going to be. We don't know if it's going to have a tremendous amount of interest. We don't even know if there's going to be a primary. We don't know anything yet because nobody has legally declared they can't do it until next week. So by asking for this special legislation, which hopefully the General Assembly would agree to, then we would have the option of having fewer polling places for the general election. The primary right now we can ask, and the Board of Elections can grant that. Right now, for the general laws specify that we would still have to have 4 polling places, no matter what. So this would just be a variance for that one election event.
So, Lou, what do you need as a motion if, in fact, this council, and I do, certainly?
Well, it would be to authorize the town to submit that draft legislation that we provide, and also to agree to allow a council resolution to follow it in support of it.
Is there a so moved on that? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, the next item are the bids. Bid 893 is for... I did too much talking on the last one. $893.
893?
Do you have 893? Yeah, because oddly enough, I don't have one.
I have 894.
Oh, I know why, because this one was opened early. Okay, so this is bid 893. This is for the supply and transport of boulders. There were 2 bids supplied. The first is from JML Excavation of Bristol in the amount of $6,998, and the second is from RMT Excavating of Warren, Rhode Island, in the amount of $4,800. The reason why you don't have it is because it's part of the regular packet.
Make a motion to refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
So discussion, would you remind the council and the public why are we moving boulders?
I always like to talk about improvements in infrastructure, so I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
The boulders are for repairs to the Independence Park boardwalk. If you notice, when you walk along the boardwalk between what we used to call the high walls and the boardwalk, there's the stone that was there was washed away, so we're going to put larger stone in there. We're having it engineered to put larger stone in there and improve that area. And also for the Wally Park, I think I said it right, Wally, or is it Halsey?
Wally, that's right.
Wally.
Wally for the swimming area.
Okay.
Well, it's the swimming and
That area.
I can't win on this one. For that seawall there, we need to repair that. It's starting to erode the grass. So that's what that's.
Thank you. We had a motion and a second to refer to the administrator. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, item J2, this is bid 894. This is for the Community Development Block Grant Home Repair Inspection Design specifications. There was one bid received from Wood Frame Structures of Warren, and this is broken down as follows. For the initial inspection site visit is $375. The detailed drawings and specifications at $85 per hour. Design services at $85 per hour. The closeout inspection and final report, the flat fee of $85, and other inspections and callbacks at $250 per hour.
You only have one bid? Just one,
bid,
huh?
Yes.
Do normally we re-advertise, Lou, or what do you think on this one?
I think what the solicitor will advise is it gives you the opportunity, because there's one bid, to negotiate with the single bidder.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's again a refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the third, this one's going to be a mouthful. This is the bid 895. This is for the municipal tree maintenance and stump grinding services. You have four bids that are received. It's a little difficult to compare apples to apples, but it is our policy to read these aloud, so if you'll bear with me. The first is from Marathon Resource Management Group, LLC of Ashland, Virginia, and for the removal, disposal of stumps from 6 inches to 24 inches is $100. The removal and disposal of stumps 24 inches or greater is $350. The cutting, disposal of trees 6 inches and greater is $250 per hour, tree trimming at $100 per hour, and flag persons at $45 per hour. The second is from Warwick Tree Service Incorporated of Coventry. The removal and disposal of stumps with 6 to 24-inch diameter is $1,880. The removal and disposal of stumps of 24 inches or greater is $2,680. The cutting and disposal of trees 6 inches or greater at $298 hourly, and tree trimming also at $298 hourly, and the flag person rate of $97 per hour. The third is New England Tree Preservation of Portsmouth, and you have the removal and disposal of stumps from 6 inches to 24 inches, ranging from $72 to $288. The removal and disposal of stumps 24 inches or greater at $12 per inch. The cutting and disposal of trees 6 inches or greater at, $161 per hour if they provide a 2-person crew, and the cutting or disposal of trees 6 inches or greater at $242.25 per hour if they provide a 3-person crew. Tree trimming is provided at $160.50 per hour for a 2-person crew, and tree trimming at $240.75 for a 3-person crew. Flag persons are $69.50 per hour. The fourth is the Northeastern Tree Service of Cranston, and the removal and disposal of stumps of 6 inches to 24 inches is $80. The removal and disposal of stumps 24 inches or greater is $120. The cutting and disposal of trees 6 inches or greater at $240 per hour, tree trimming at $160 per hour, and flag persons at $50 per hour.
Whew. Nice job.
That was a mouthful.
I did that earlier today, too.
Motion to refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay. And back to the other thing. We have the periodic report provided by Alan Klepper of the Bristol County Water Authority. That's item K1.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And we have a we have a consent agenda item DD that was requested to be withheld at the request of Councilman Texera.
Please.
We had the opportunity to attend Mr. William A. Tucker, Jr., who turned 100. The town administrator and I were present, and quite an extended group of family members were there as well. So it was quite interesting to have a conversation with him, and as you may know, he was a brother of Harold Tucker, who has passed on, But it was quite a gentleman, let me tell you, very resilient, still with a nice handshake, standing while talking, even though we asked him to sit. He says, no, I'm standing, But it was great to be there. So, again, happy birthday, Mr. Tucker, and best wishes going forward, And I know the town has presented him a citation in behalf of the town council, so that was a very nice gesture.
Thank you. Can you have a motion to receive and file on that one?
Yes. Please receive and file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the individual council member agenda items, beginning with the chairman.
We have some appointments that need to happen. We talked about earlier on one of them in particular that we need to schedule. I'm going to work with the clerk, and we'll send out a couple of dates to schedule something and throw out a couple of ideas. We've done it in the past that we've started a council meeting early, since we're all scheduled to be here anyway. So we'll offer a couple of possibilities. Let's see if it works for everybody. But we also, at our next meeting, will be appointing Joint Finance Committee. And then need to schedule. I did speak with the president of the Warren Town Council. She actually called a couple of days ago, and we had this conversation, kind of start that off, about needing to schedule that. If you recall, we shared our council schedule with the town of Warren and also the school committee, school department, so they could know what we had worked on, so we can work within that. Ours is not the be-all, end-all, obviously. We just wanted them to know what we had worked on, so we can make sure that we schedule those meetings accordingly. Once we appoint the Joint Finance Committee, we'll be needing to call a meeting so we can have vote on a chair and take those next steps and schedule. Just want to remind everybody, I think we need 3 meetings, 4 total. One of them is to pick the chair and then schedule, and then we need 3 meetings, 1 to vote, right, for the actual budget itself, and then 2 prior to that to have those discussions that we've done in the past. Those 2 prior, one is we talk about it, we've asked questions. The second one, they've come in to answer those questions and do their presentation. Third one, of course, again, is to vote on that. And I'm going to leave it with one more thing before I say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Rep Marshall reached out to me today and asked if we knew anything about the VW Dieselgate money. And he brought to my attention that East Providence just got $850,000, and this money is for environmental improvements, which would include, but not limited to, Tan Yard Brook Phase, you name it, right? And there's a whole bunch of other things. So if we could look into this, and I would ask if we could have something for the council next meeting, if there's nothing there, or if there's something there, and if there's something that we need to do as a town to potentially take advantage of those funds. If East Providence got $850,000, my goodness, we're so good at this. I'm guessing, I don't know, a couple of $1 million, Diane, right? Yes, all right. Just set it up high and right. So I'll leave you with this. Again, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's a tough time of year and a wonderful time of year. If you know somebody who's alone or doesn't have a lot of friends and family, take a moment to visit them. Take a moment to bring them sweetbread or whatever it is that you like to have this time of year. Yeah, whatever. That's what we do, right? But whatever it is that you do, whether it's a cookie and most of it is just taking a moment. And you can be lonely and be 16. You can be lonely and be 8. You can be lonely and be 80. So take a moment. We're such a beautiful community. We care so much about each other. This is the time of year when people really need that extra. And it's not about the gifts. It's about the hugs. And it's about showing somebody that you care. And sometimes those are the things that keep people in a much better place. So I say again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays. Thanks.
Mr. Sweeney.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take sweetbread any day. So welcome. If you got any extra
I only
cookies
deliver,
or
I don't
anything else, I'm trying to just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a prosperous New Year. And to the team that's sitting here in front of me, I'm looking at all the department heads and everybody. Thank you for all your hard work. Really appreciate it. We're a great team, and I think Bristol's moving in the right direction. So thank you, and have a good night.
Mr. Texera.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay. I have to agree with Tim. Thank you for all of the effort, you folks put forward, and to our town. It's not easy. It's not easy. With that, thank you to Mike Davis. I guess I'm supposed to take Stuart's place. Thank you to Mike Davis and his partner there. Can't see him behind the camera. And who's the guy standing back there? Oh, our Archie Martins. So thank you to all of you.
Shucks. Please.
So I wish, as the chairman already stated, this is the time of the year. So let's support each other throughout the time. The happy times, the sad times, but let's be there for each other. So with that being said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Boas Festas, Feliz Natal.
Ms.
You
Perella.
say it in Portuguese, in Italian for me, and then I don't have to say it.
Bueno Natale. Yes.
So, well, pretty much the same. I want to thank everyone for all of your hard work that we've done this year and every year, and to wish all of you sitting here, all my colleagues in government, and everyone watching at home a very Merry Christmas and a very happy, healthy, prosperous New Year. And that's pretty much it. It's going to be this time next week. It'll all be over. Hard to believe, since we'll probably have a lot to do to get ready for it. Right?
I have all my shopping.
Mr. Lay.
So I have you for the final 3 minutes here, and I promise I'm not always going to have long remarks like this because I'm always the last one going, and I know I'm holding everybody captive here. Lou told me as long as I keep any remarks to a page and a half, I should be okay. So what I do is I stretch the margins, and I figure out a way to make it a page and a half, but I use extra big font, too. So I prepared some remarks since this is my first agenda item, so I wanted it to reflect a little bit more on my election and what the voters, and to thank the voters a little bit. I think we remember so much in life by the milestones that we have met, and besides my kids, I think being an elected official is probably one of my greatest accomplishments. It was just a really special year for me, 2018. But it's also a year that was marked by moments that could cause us or should cause us to insist on more from ourselves, from our neighbors, and from our state and national leaders. So sometimes our inefficacy with politics is high. But we have to look no further than our own town to rest confident in knowing that our community is capable of profoundly offsetting some of the bad in our world. Today I was reminded of this after watching The Road Show, where our very own Bristol resident, Steve Brosnian, was featured for his work with Good Night Lights. This initiative began when Steve would use a flashlight to signal good night to Hasbro Children's Hospital patients on his way home from visiting them. He began signaling goodbye to them right along the Providence River at 8:30, and the patient, after seeing his good night light, would flicker the hospital room light as if also to say goodnight. This simple act of kindness has grown to a dramatically large scale with police lights, office buildings, and large groups of people participating. This story all brought to you by one of our community members in Bristol. Today I was reminded of the good that is generated by our community when I learned of the Foster a Senior program that is now in its third year after having been started by Donna Wilson, an employee at Benjamin Church Senior Center on 1020 Hope Street. Donna organized the entire community to donate gifts for our seniors, which she then personally delivers to them, some of whom will be spending the holiday season alone or will be homebound. All of this brought to you by one of our community members in Bristol. 2 weeks ago, I was reminded of the good that is generated by our community when I read about Jen Mancieri's work through the Bristol Fire Department's Ladies Auxiliary. Jen spearheaded an effort to hand-deliver clothing, toys, and Stop and Shop gift cards to members of our community in need. All of this brought to you by our community members in Bristol. So if you think that all of this work has been done by paid volunteers, think again. These are unpaid volunteers motivated only by the power of their ideas, the size of their hearts, and the warmness of their souls. If it ever seems like the world has fallen down around you, as sometimes 2018 kind of felt like, remember this. There are people in our community like Steve, Donna, and Jen out there. That's my Bristol. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Town Administrator agenda items.
Jeez, I don't know how I'm going to follow that up. All I have to talk about is some piping and culverts.
You're a showman.
Tanyard Brook is going well. Planning on crossing Charles Street, so one more to go. Did you get across it today? Yeah, we were able to cross Charles Street, so one more to go. A little bit of a slowdown during the holidays, but CB Utility plans to work right through the winter till it's done. Same with the major sewer drainage project, the drain that is going to help alleviate the overflow of rainwater into our facility. They've started on the shoreline, and they're working, they're just about at Ferry Road now. They're going to take a short break for the holidays, and they're going to return, work right through the winter. So things are progressing with those two major projects. I'd like to congratulate Antonio Texera on his appointment as town manager in Little Compton.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to maybe calling you occasionally. I just hope that you don't use that against me.
Lost in the way there.
Yeah, get lost. I was going to say, don't use my questions against me in a campaign in a couple of years. I say that lightly. But congratulations, and they're lucky to have you there.
Appreciate that very much.
And I look forward to working with the entire council the next 2 years. And Merry Christmas to all of you and everybody at home, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good night, everyone.